My dear friends, in this video, we shall discuss about the one of the innovative training technique and skill of teaching, the micro teaching. As we know that the teacher is a leader of the classroom. As he is a leader, so is the students. In this regard, an effective teacher is one who understands the principles of teaching as well as the skill of teaching. And teaching is called as both the science and art. When we understand the principles of teaching, then it is called as a science. When we inculcate and acquire different skills of teaching, then teaching is called as an art. So if you want to become an effective teacher, able to reach the children very perfectly is possible not only through the content knowledge, but also through the power of dissemination of the knowledge. Once you have a grip about your content, mastery over the content, that is not enough to reach the children intellectually. So what actually we require other than the content grip is the way of disseminate, the way of inculcate, the way of interact with the children is a very important point. So a teacher may be of any level, either the primary school or high school, secondary schools or the PU college or any higher education institution. The micro teaching skills are highly required. By that one can able to manage his or her own classroom behaviors and can able to modify the students behaviors. So the micro teaching is such a skill where we learn the skill of teaching. First we try to understand the meaning of the micro teaching. As we know, the micro means a small, teaching means the interaction. So render the information among the children or among the students. So here teaching and micro teaching means a scaled down encounter of teaching. So as we know the macro teaching where we going to teach the content for the large number of students and for the minimum 40 minutes and maximum 1 hour, 1.5 hours. But whereas in the micro teaching, it is first thing is we teach for a small group of children and with a small content within a small period of time. That is micro teaching is the meaning. Whereas the micro teaching is not a method of teaching like lecturing method, demonstration method, project method, heuristic method, discovery method, and other methods. It is not a method of teaching. Instead of that, it is a training technique. One who undergo the micro teaching skills acquire the skills of teaching. Like the human beings are going to learn and train in different vehicles, riding the different vehicles by means of continuous practice. Bicycle riding, we can train it. We can get the training by means of continuous rehearsal. In the same way, in order to modify the behaviors of the student, a teacher should understand his own or own behaviors in the classroom. So that behaviors are going to be trained by the micro teaching. Hence, a micro teaching is a training technique and it is not a method of a teaching like already I said. So then other definitions related to the micro teaching are like this. The micro teaching is a miniaturized classroom teaching. It is scaled down teaching encounter. So already I told you the micro teaching is going to practice by the practitioner or the teacher or the student teacher in a small classroom size with a small content and within a very small amount of period. For that reason, the micro teaching is called as miniaturized classroom teaching, or it is also called as a scaled down teaching encounter. So we have to recall the contributors of the micro teaching. This concept is coined in the year 1961 at Stanford University by D.W.Allen. He is a professor of the Stanford University. He coined the name the micro teaching. He derived the concept, the micro teaching. Along with the D.W.Allen, MS Lalita is also worked a lot to list out the micro teaching skills can be practiced in our schools before handle the real classrooms. So it is a great work of the D.W. Allen and others at Stanford University in the year 1961. After that, by means of continuous effort, Allen, along with the Rhine, published a book by name Micro Teaching in 1969. Now also it is available. And other books of the D.W. Allen with others in the collaboration of others also available in the market and also in the libraries of the especially teacher education institutions. And after understanding this, we try to understand about one of the definitions of the micro teaching. By that we can understand very fruitfully what is a micro teaching is. So it is a controlled practice, a system of controlled practice that makes it possible to concentrate on a specific teaching behavior and to practice teaching under controlled conditions. So here one can concentrate on his own behavior as a teacher and also practice the same teaching behavior in a controlled condition. What the micro teaching skills are going to learn, are going to acquire, are not in a natural situation. It is a controlled situation. Hence, the micro teaching is also called as a simulated teaching. So knitted teaching. So where everything is artificial for sake of concentrate on the specific behavior. So it is a controlled situation training. So micro teaching can be have so many features. That features can be listed as follows. So first feature is a teacher practice one skill at one time. We know, friends, teacher have to play a different role in the classroom. Sometimes he act as a mentor, and sometimes he act as a supervisor. Sometimes he had to listen the students answers. Sometimes he had to put the answer to question to the students. Sometimes he had to be probe the students answer, manage the behaviors of the students, supply the skills, the examples, illustrations, and use the blackboard. So many things have to be played. So these are all called as the skills one by one. So skill of questioning, skill of probing, skill of managing the answer of the students, skill of illustration, skill of examples, giving examples, skill of reinforcement, so skill of stimulus variation, skill of blackboard work. So here, before going to handle a natural class, a practitioner or a student teacher or a teacher he wanted to acquire the skills, undergo micro teaching, only one skill at one time. Only one skill he is going to choose at one time. That's one of the features of the micro teaching. Second feature is already I told, it is a scale down teaching encounter. For that reason, it is class size is lesson, only 5 to 10 students are there instead of the overcrowded classes like 40 or above 40. So usually after acquiring the skills through micro teaching practice, one can easily handle the class of 40 students or little above. So 40 above is not admissible, of course. So of course we can handle the students of 40 in the natural conditions when we learn the skills in the artificial or the conditioned situation. Then another feature of the micro teaching is like this. The duration of the class is also reduced to 6 minutes instead of 40 minutes usually in the schools and 1 hour in a higher education institutions. So for sake of acquire the skill, the time duration is minimized for the 6 minutes. Within 6 minutes, a teacher practice, a practitioner undergo to learn one skill. It's another feature. Then one more feature is the students are peer and may not be real one. So it is a really very good feature of the micro teaching. Here the students who are acting, they are not actually the real one. So our own peer are observe our lesson. They understand what mistakes we are going to do and what errors we are going to commit. After the observation of the 6 minutes lesson of our own, our peer only give the idea, give the feedback to us, and they are going to modify our behavior by means of their feedback, their observations. So hence here the peer or act as the students, they are not real one. Their size is also only 5 to 10 students. And next one is next feature, the observers are also peer and one is expert and a teacher, usually teacher educator. He is called as a supervisor. So nowadays, so many advanced techniques are developed in observation and recording the teachers teaching, the learners teaching, the trainees skill development. So by means of using the Android set what we have, by that only we can make the videos of the training, and we can make the audio of the training. And apart from that, a teacher educator or the expert or the supervisor is observe the skill which is going to exercised by the student in the classroom. There is a simulated classroom. Hence, with the teacher, educator, or the supervisor, with a schedule, observation is going to be made. So this is the one of the features of the micro teaching. And next feature is the content is concise for 6 minutes and no or less importance for the content here. So in micro teaching, what actually we focus is for the practice of skill rather than the focus of the content. So content here act as a means to learn the skills, but it is not important. We are not give much importance for the content development. Instead of that, here we give much importance for the development and acquire of the skill. So content is less important. But one thing we have to be remember and precautions, take a precautions and cautious about the content by selecting the skill. According to the skill what we are going to select, we have to take the matching content. Otherwise, it will be difficult. In forthcoming slides, you can understand about the content, how to select the content. And the next one is very important is steps of micro teaching. So as we know, there are different steps for the different methods of teaching. In the same way, the micro teaching is also have usually 5 steps. These 5 steps are practiced in all over the country related to the micro teaching. It is also called as a teaching cycle. So first, a teacher or a trainer or a trainee or a practitioner going to teach by taking one content, by selecting a one skill. For example, set induction, how to introduce a lesson. By taking a skill, the set induction, by taking a small content of 6 minutes, he is going to start to teach. That is going to practice, where in the simulated situation. So he have to teach or she have to teach for 6 minutes. So content should be taken for that much only. And within the 6 minutes, he have to complete all the components which are come in the skill. That is introducing the lesson. After the teaching, the feedback will be immediately given to the trainee. That feedback is given by 2 peer reviewers and as well as one expert or the supervisor for 6 minutes by concentrate on the component of the skill. So each skill have different components, 5 components, 6 components. On the base of that component only, the feedback should be given to the trainee. That is for 6 minutes only. So after 6 minutes of feedback, the trainee has made a provision to replan his plan. What actually already he prepared a plan to teach, he or she is going to be replan or modify the plan according to the feedback given by the peer reviewers as well as the expert or the supervisor. So 12 minutes of time is going to provide for the trainee to replan. After 12 minutes, again the trainee should get ready to reteach. So when he start again teach, That is called as reteach for 6 minutes again. So teach and reteach for 6 minutes, feedback for 6 minutes, for replan 12 minutes, again for reteach, again the same peer reviewers, and as well as the experts and the supervisor is observed the lesson is going to give the re-feedback to the trainee, so or the teacher or the practitioner. So it is again for 6 minutes. So then altogether 5 steps of 36 minutes. In order to acquire a one skill, we have to make use of the components and we have to be within 36 minutes practice one skill, and we have to continue the practice until we acquire the ability of teaching by using that particular skill. So at least we have to be reach one adequate level of skill acquisition. So that is called as one cycle. So then by that we can do 2 cycles, 3 cycles. Usually if you within a 3 cycles, one can easily acquire the skill. So this is the one cycle of 36 minutes. So already I told you what is a teach, and videographed, audio taped, and mobile recorder can also be used for the teach, and feedback with the help of the components going to give it to the training. And replan, one should replan according to the feedback given by the teacher, peer reviewers as well as the supervisors and the experts. Then reteach for 6 minutes again. Usually here what actually we look after is here. For reteach we should take other group other than the previous group. Usually we are going to retaught the different but comparable group of people instead of for the same group, because if the content is going to repeat the same, maybe we'll get the answer from the students, maybe we are not able to acquire the skill. For that reason, for retaught, we use other group which is comparable to equal to our previous group. Then re-feedback again as like in the feedback. So new ideas are going to be due to acquire the skill effectively by the peer reviewers as well as the supervisors. Then what are the advantages of the micro teaching? As already I told in the beginning only. So a teacher with idea of the micro teaching, a teacher without a micro teaching is differ to each other. So a teacher with a micro teaching idea is definitely able to concentrate, able to capture the attention of the students and able to motivate the students. And the teacher without micro teaching idea, of course, he can able to develop, able to capture the attention of the students by means of his stimulus variation, voice modulation, or by means of his mastery of the content matter. So otherwise we can't able to capture the attention of the students. So what are the advantages? The first advantage is micro teaching as a training technique is that it is a teaching in relatively simple and non-threatening context. So especially in the beginning, the beginners, instead of directly go to the real classrooms, maybe because of the some other things unable to manage the class. So if once practice the micro teaching, it will be very simple and non-threatening context. And then second advantage or the use merit of the micro teaching is, why should one practice the micro teaching is, the practitioner or the student teacher can focus his or her attention on clearly specified aspects of his or her own behavior. So through the micro teaching practice, a teacher can able to manage and give attention to his or her own classroom behaviors. So many a times the classroom behaviors of the teacher influence a lot on the students, because the teacher is a role model for the students. Almost all the students are imitate the teachers. For that reason, our behaviors should be very, very perfect. So questioning technique, answering technique, receiving the answer of the students, receive the response of the students, manage the response of the students, all together are comes into the behavior of the teacher. And next advantage is the full and very objective feedback is available to the practitioner or a student teacher to modify his or her behavior. So as I've already told that Here the observers are the peers, and one more observer is the expert or the supervisor, our own teacher educator. So objective feedback is available instead of criticism. Here it is not a criticism, it is a feedback. Criticism is different and feedback is different. It's a creative criticism by the practitioner or the student teacher able to modify his own or own behavior. Hence, an objective feedback is available through the micro teaching practice. One more advantage of the micro teaching is teaching is a complex act, we know very well, because teacher have to play many role in the classroom. Many a times the students are not attentive, and sometimes the students are over attentive and over smart. Then how to manage all these things? So hence the teacher's act is a very complex. So the complex act is going to be broken down into the simpler components, making the learning task more manageable is available in the micro teaching. So the total skills are going to divide under the different skills. By that one can easily manage the complex act of teaching. Then procedure of micro teaching. So in order to train or acquire the skill, we have to follow some of the procedures of micro teaching. So what are the procedures of micro teaching? It involves 3 phases. The first phase is knowledge acquisition phase. So without the theoretical idea of a skill, one cannot able to understand and acquire and practice the skill. So the first phase is one should have a good idea, have a good thematic idea, theoretical knowledge about the skill what he or she is undergo or practice. Hence the first phase is knowledge acquisition. Second phase is skill acquisition. That is a real practice. After understanding theoretically, then one can undergo the practice. That is called as skill acquisition phase or actual skill practice phase. Third one is a transfer phase. Why? Because the micro teaching skills are going to be practiced in the controlled situation. Hence, after learning the skills or acquiring the skills in the control situation, one should go to transfer to the real classroom. For that reason, it is called as a transfer phase. So we'll see one by one how they are actually. So the supervisor should first give the idea about the skill to the practitioners or the student teachers. How should he give, he or she should give the knowledge acquisition, knowledge about the skill means like this. One, he should let the trainees or the teachers to observe. He have to demonstrate a skill himself or herself as a supervisor, or else he can or she can make a video on one particular skill and display that video among the students. So students should observe the skill, how to practice that skill. This is the comes under the knowledge acquisition phase. Before handle a skill, before we are going to practice a skill. After observation of the demonstration, so the student teachers or the practitioners should allow to analyze what actually they observed, what are their doubts, what are their confusions, and what maybe they are going to be face the problems in real situation. So such discussions will be allow in analysis phase. So these two are comes under the knowledge acquisition phase. After understanding thematically about the skill component of the skill, then one should go for the real practice. That is called as the skill acquisition phase. In skill acquisition phase, each trainee and each student should prepare a micro lesson plan according to the components of a skill. So each skill have its own components. So by observing that components, a student teacher or a trainee should prepare the micro lesson. I will show the micro lesson plan to you also in the forthcoming slides. Then after preparation of the micro lesson, he should undergo the practice in a simulated situation. So for 6 minutes, then uh, teach for 6 minutes, and then feedback for 6 minutes, and then replan for 12 minutes, reteach for 5 minutes, 6 minutes, again re-feedback 6 minutes, altogether 12 minutes. So like this, the practice should be going on. Practice should be do like this. So after this, the transfer phase. And the third one is the transfer phase. As micro teaching is practiced in a simulated situation, one should transfer his skill to the real classroom. Hence, it includes two subphases, evaluation and the apply. So, by getting the feedback from the supervisor and the peer observers and peer reviewers, one should evaluate on his own what actually the problems are, what actually the errors are, the mistakes he or she committed, and evaluate herself and himself, and then he proceed and then apply to the real classroom in the block practice teaching, or the called as the macro teaching. So these are the three phases one should remember before going to practice the skill in micro teaching. And then what are the standard procedures of micro teaching skill practice? So we have to plan the micro teaching skill practice using the following steps. The first step already comes into the knowledge acquisition phase, orientation about the micro teaching. So get the idea about the micro teaching skills. Then discussion of teaching skills, what teaching skills are required, discussion about that among the students or the student teachers. Then presentation of the model lesson. Then fourth one is the preparation of the micro lesson plan. Then practice of the skill. Then step number 6 is the simulated condition have to be create a one simulated condition. Then seventh one is observation of the teaching skills, and last one is the feedback. So these are the 8 steps to follow to proceed in the micro teaching skill. Then several skills are listed by the Stanford University in the beginning. Total 14 skills are listed by the Stanford University to practice in the schools. They are like this. The contribution of MS Lalita is very rememberable here by means of a very wide survey in Maharaja Sayaji Rao University of Baroda. She listed 14 skills like this. One is first one skill is called as a stimulus variation. Second is a set induction, closer. Stimulus variation means voice modulation, oral visual switching, pausing, movements in the classrooms, silence of the teacher, facial expressions, body language, all are comes under the stimulus variation skill. By means of stimulus variation, a teacher can easily capture the attention of the student for a long time, for a long period. And second is a set induction. So how to begin the class, how to start a class. So here set induction is also called as introducing a lesson. What are the previous knowledge of the students? What actually they know about the content, what I'm going to teach, where I start, where I stop. So this comes under the set induction skill. Then closer. So how to conclude my topic of discussion, my content is called as the comes under the skill the closer. And teacher silence and non-verbal cues already covered in the stimulus variation. Reinforcing people's participation. Many a times teachers are not reinforce the students' participation, not reinforce the students' answers. So we have to develop the skill ourselves how to reinforce. So what are the different modes of reinforce in the skill, the reinforcement skill? Then fluency in questioning. So by means of pose the questions, one should able to motivate the students to learn. So in this skill, we learn how to ask the question, what are the grammatical structure of the question. Next one is probing questioning. Go deep idea about the content by means of questioning, by means of supplying the clues, by means of asking further information, by means of critical thinking questions. So here we learn that skills in probing questioning and use of higher order questions. So many a times when we put a lower order questions, the all the students are maybe start making noise in the class. Then we have to put some higher order questions to the gifted learners. By that, they can think and they can also easily involve in our classrooms. By that, we can manage the individual difference in the classroom very effectively by using higher order questions. How to construct the higher order questions, how to use them. So we have to practice in the micro teaching skill. And then divergent questions. Then recognizing and attending the behaviors of the students, manage the students' behavior. Illustrating and use of examples. This is called as the skill of illustrating with examples. So in order to attain a concept among the students, a teacher should not directly give the concept. Instead of that, he or she should give the illustrations and supply the examples. Following the inductive deductive method, one teacher can easily reach the attain the content among the students. So it's a very effective micro teaching skill. So where we learn how to illustrate. So that is comes under the. Then lecturing, here also we modify now. It is called as a skill of explaining. So usually how to explain the content is a skill. So how to use the linking words and how to give the gist of the content and how to give the examples. So how to explain in total comes under the lecturing skill. Now it is modified as a skill of explaining. Then planned the repetition. Many times we have to repeat, recall. Then how to repeat, recall. The content is also one of the skills. One of the skills that comes under the content of the planned questions. Then completeness of the communication. So how to communicate in the classroom is also one of the very efficient skill. There we learn how to communicate with the students. So these are the 14 skills listed by the Professor M.S. Lalita in MS University, Baroda. And now many skills are identified by the different universities. So again, the Center of Advanced Study in Education, abbreviated as a CASE, MS University, Baroda, listed the skills in the following 3 categories. What are all the skills now available are listed under 3 categories. I have given that list under the 3 categories which are made by the Center of Advanced Study in Education, MS University, Baroda. Pre-instructional skill, instructional skill, and post-instructional skill. In pre-instructional skill, that means before we are going to interact with the children, before we are going to teach to the children, we have to prepare ourselves some content. We have to prepare and plan ourselves the interaction styles in the classroom. That comes under the pre-instructional skill. Usually, one of the skills of pre-instructional skill is skill of writing the instructional objectives. Writing the instructional objective is an art. So by means of understanding the behavioral terms, specific objectives, one can write the instructional objectives. The ultimate aim of the teacher is attain the instructional objectives at the end of the class. So the almost tests are also prepared on the basis of the instructional objectives. So how many instructional objectives have to list out, and how many instructional objectives can be attained, and what are the different teaching aids, or the what are the different styles may I adopt to accomplish the instructional objectives is a comes under the pre-instructional skill. And second one is skill of sequencing and organizing the content. So how to organize, which comes first, which come next, like that we have to develop the skill in this. So these are all the skills going to learn before going to interact, hence it is called as a pre-instructional skills. Then skill of location of situations. So how to locate the situations comes under this. Then skill of planning for differential assignment. So we have to assign the assignments and activities at the end of the class, or in the middle of the class, or in the beginning of the class. So there we are going to learn about how to give the assignments, and what is the length of the assignment, scope of the assignment, and how the assignment should be distributed among the different level of the students. It comes under the pre-instructional skill. So if we practice these skills are called as the pre-instructional skills. Then actual interaction skills. So one should learn and one should acquire these skills and have to be practiced in the class. So skill of introducing lesson, already we told it as a set induction. Skill of obtaining feedback from the people. Skill of diagnosing the people difficulty. So by means of conducting the diagnostic test, one can easily identify the difficulties, problems of the learning among the students. So here we have some components. According to that, we learn how to diagnose the people's difficulty of learning, what difficulties they are facing in learning. Skill of increasing the people participation. Then skill of reacting to the people response and the initiations. Then skill of probing technique. Skill of blackboard use. Skill of illustrating with examples. Skill of probing questioning. Skill of stimulus variation. Skill of introducing a lesson. All are comes under the instructional skill. And the third one is comes under the category post instructional skill. After disseminate the content using the skill, what the pros and cons, how effective that is. So we learn in post instructional skill. Skill of writing variety of test items. So usually we are going to conduct a unit test or an achievement test after the completion of the content. So in order to prepare the achievement test, a teacher should prepare the questions. That questions are from very difficulty to less difficulty, or from high discrimination power to low discrimination power. And it should be balanced using the three-dimensional and two-dimensional charts. By means of using the three-dimensional and two-dimensional chart, a teacher can balance the question paper. So how to write the test items, how to analyze the test items, how to find out the difficulty of the test items is comes under the post-instructional skill. By that a teacher can prepare one achievement test, or to use the diagnostic test also one can use the. And in post-instructional skill, another skill is skill in making plausible interpretations. So after administer the standardized achievement test or achievement test or the diagnostic test, how to interpret the result. So here one can going to acquire the skill of interpretation of the result. Then last one is a skill of planning remedial measures. So after identify the problems of the children, learning problems, one can plan for the remedial classes. We have to solve the problems of the students. So here we practice about the remedial measures. Like this, a micro teaching skill is very useful for especially the beginners, and also it is useful for all the teachers and also it is useful for the teacher, he who or she who want to become an effective teacher and become to reach very easily to the students. So thank you for patience listening, and also thank you for the organizers to give an opportunity to share my ideas about the micro teaching with you all. Thank you once again.